name is Desiree. I'm with the St. Louis County Library. We are thrilled to be able to bring to you this virtual author event with not only the author, but the illustrator of the picture book, How to Put an Octopus to Bed, with Sherri Duskey Rinker and Vivian Schwarz. This event is part of our Reading Garden event series with the library that features authors and illustrators for our young readers. We are very proud to partner with our local independent bookstore, Novel Neighbor. I highly recommend that you go to their web platforms and purchase the book because it is absolutely fantastic. I also want to give a huge shout out to HEC TV for helping us make this virtual author event series a reality. So just a little intro for those of you who may not know Sherri Duskey Rinker, and I cannot believe that that's even possible. Our author practically lives on the New York Times bestseller list. Sherri is the author of Steam Train, Dream Train, Big Machines, the story of Virginia Lee Burton, and the incredibly popular Goodnight, Goodnight construction site series. She also has a middle grade novel coming out, Rever the Speedway Squirrel. I think that's debuting in the fall. Okay, and today she's going to be speaking with us about her newest picture book, which is How to Put an Octopus to Bed. If we were in the library, I would make you guys do some jazz hands. So those of you watching at home, a little bit of jazz hands, and welcome Sherri Duskey Rinker.
Wow, that's such a lovely intro. Thank you so much. I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you. I'm really thrilled that we get to actually talk to you today from our homes. So I wanted to ask you a few questions about yourself first, and then I thought maybe we could talk about the story and collaboration, and then maybe you could read us a story a little later. So these are going to be very hard-hitting questions, Sherri, so just FYI. The first question is, what is the hardest thing about writing a picture book?
I think in a picture book, every word matters. Every single word is important. Not that that's not the case in a longer piece, but there's much more, especially because many of my books rhyme. There's a lot of focus on, you know, the words I've chosen, meter, and getting, you know, a sense of a full story in a very small amount of words. I would say those are my biggest challenges.
Was it a big jump for you to go into middle grade, or was it something you were just itching to do?
Both. You know, there's so many middle grade books and authors that I so deeply admire that it had always been in the back of my mind that I would so love to do something in that genre. And then when my own kids started to segue into middle grade, and I saw their, you know, their reading skills, their comprehension, and that kind of really magical place where the pictures in a picture book lead the reader through the story, and then that place where your reader's imagination sees it. You know, that's just such an amazing thing. It was an incredibly difficult process for me. I started out thinking I would write a chapter book, and through some encouragement with my editor and my agent, it became a middle grade novel. The edits are just so much more sweeping, I have found. So, for example, in a picture book, you know, this seems a little repetitive, or this rhyme feels a little forced, or maybe we don't need this section, or could you add a little bit more here? Very concise direction. Whereas in my middle grade novel, I would get something like, give me a sense of the character's intention here. Help me to understand more. So it was just so much more broad and sweeping, and so many more times that I felt like I had to go back to the drawing board, and then just keeping the whole plot in my mind and making sure that, I wrapped up ideas and thoughts throughout. It's probably up there with the hardest things I've ever done, for sure, for
Oh,
sure.
wow.
And and I'm putting like, raising children, childbirth, being married, and right up there is writing my first middle grade novel. So yeah, super challenging, but worth it. Like, I feel great about it. I just, it was a process for sure.
Do you think you're going to do more?
Well, this particular one came with a sequel, so I'm writing the second one now. So there's that. And I do have an idea that I've been playing around with for a long, long time. I started it, I didn't love where it was going, but I feel like maybe I'm ready to jump back into that. So yeah, we'll see.
If you were stranded on a deserted island, which of your characters would you want to be stranded with, and why?
I kind of have to go with Bulldozer. I really love Bulldozer, and I've had the incredible opportunity to sit in the Bulldozer. Nobody's actually ever let me do anything in it. I get to play with the knobs but I think it would have to be Bulldozer. I think we could accomplish a lot on a desert island. Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for a character that can actually help you build shelter
Right?
on a deserted island.
Yeah,
So
I think we could
I
clear
totally,
some space. I'm pretty freaked out about snakes, so I think we could kind of get some stuff out of the way and, make some things a little bit more clear so I don't, encounter anything I, am not seeing. So
what was the inspiration for trying to put an octopus to bed?
I had that idea for such a long time. So I have very active boys when they were little. Now they're teenage slugs, but when they were little, they were just insanely energetic. And I can remember trying to put their pajamas on while they were wiggling and moving around and jumping up and down on the bed and like all going crazy. And I can remember like trying to, shuffle their little legs into their two legs of the pajamas, and more than once getting both legs in the same hole, and having to start all over, or, getting the, I couldn't get the arm in or whatever. So that was really one of the first, kind of pieces that made me think because it was so octopus-like. And then I can remember my oldest son in a grocery cart at the grocery store, and just, you think you've got him spaced away enough from the, and this is when he was, a little preschool or whatever. But he's in the, the seat of the grocery cart and just clearing cereal boxes or grabbing, or you're trying to check out and he's pulling the candy off the aisle, and you can't duct tape your children, I don't think. But I wanted to, because it was just like this, and and he's happy. He's not a bad child. He's laughing and it's funny, and but those kind of two pieces, I think, sort of came together for me to want to create this character that was just, because I think every mom has a little octopus at certain times where they're just their minds are going so quickly, everything is going so quickly. So that was really the inspiration behind Floyd, that's how Floyd came to be.
So Sherri, when you're writing your books, you obviously are trying to work through a story, but do you have an end game? Do you have a message that you're trying to get through? Are you just trying to have fun with something? What's your process like?
I have not ever sat down to say, and if authors do, that's great, but to say I want to write a story about, bullying or whatever it is, it just, my messages, I think, just sort of develop as I go along, thinking about the characters and what's important to them.
Let's talk about the fact that you have, with your picture books, you have had some really fabulous illustrators. I know you're an artist yourself, right?
I went to school for graphic design. I've considered myself an artist on and off as I was younger. Very much became what I considered myself to be a designer, like a person that put things together visually. But I, in my career, hired the people that I felt were artists, photographers, illustrators to put things together for me. And then my job was to sort of structure it in a way that I felt like was attractive and effective. And yeah, so a little bit. Long-winded answer.
Did you ever consider doing your own artwork?
No, but because of my background, I have very specific ideas. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes Goodnight construction site is a perfect example. I thought I knew exactly how I wanted that book to look. And when I saw Tom's first sketches, I was blown away. And there was something, I'm a huge Virginia Lee Burton fan. And there was something very timeless and classic and very Virginia Lee Burton-esque of, you know, a little Mike Mulligan-ish that I saw in those early sketches that just melted my heart. So a little bit of both. And I will see sketches and sometimes have very definitive ideas about, and I'm very fortunate. Not every author gets the opportunity to weigh in. And I get the opportunity to weigh in on, you know, who is illustrating, and I get to see sketches and make comments. I'm very fortunate. And sometimes I have very definitive ideas about things, but yeah, where were we going? Yes, but I feel like looking at illustrators' work is like a big giant candy store, and you get to pick like the most delicious looking thing for what you're creating. And I've never been tempted. I mean, maybe there will be something that I think, oh my gosh, I totally would love to do that myself. But I already feel like they're already really good at it. And I feel like I would struggle and fumble, and, you know, I haven't painted anything since college. You know what I mean? I just think it would be like, and I feel like if I were an artist, really, really an artist, I'd know it by now. Like, I feel like when you meet an artist, you totally, they live it, they breathe it. So if I were supposed to be that, I would have been that already.
What's first, your words and then the art? And then do you go back and forth with the illustrator? Or how does that work?
Yeah, the process is interesting. Generally speaking, so for example, my sitting down with Tom in a room creating our book is very unusual. There are, there are some, we think of like Mac Barnett and John Klassen and, people, friends who decide to create a book together. I would say that is very atypical. Typically, and it's obviously way different for an author illustrator, one person that is doing both. But for me as an author, I will create a concept. I will, put an initial manuscript together, send it to my agent. She'll have ideas to incorporate, and then she will shop it. And once the editor gets it, we'll talk about illustrators, who I envision, who I imagine. There's definitely some back and forth there. They will sometimes recommend people I've never heard of, and I get to sort of explore and see and look. And that is very collaborative for me. I'm very fortunate in that. So then, you get the illustrator, they start sketching, you weigh in, but typically that editor is the go-between. You get two creative people, and we can be kind of a pain in the butt. We are very focused and driven and passionate. And in my experience, it's been important to have that very kind of even-keeled editor, to go between the two of us. So there are times where I will reach out, don't tell any of my editors, and say, I just need to let you know that I love everything and it's looking so good and I'm so excited. But if I were to have an issue, I would never speak to the illustrator directly. it just would be very unprofessional, not done. And I think it's set up that way for good reason.
So for How to Put an Octopus to Bed,
Yeah.
your illustrator is actually in London.
Yeah.
Have you met her?
No, I've never met with her. We've exchanged a few group emails. I love her style. It's so perfect. We went back and forth, that my editor and I went back and forth, and I kept saying, I really need someone that can capture the motion, that can capture the energy of him. He's so, and when I saw samples of Vivian's work, I was like, yes, this is perfect. So yeah, and it's not uncommon. I did not meet Patrick McDonald until long after our book had come out, Silly Wonderful You. So yeah, I hope I get to meet her at some point, but yeah, it's not unusual that we have not met.
Yeah, well, you will actually meet virtually, kind of, because we have the opportunity to speak to Vivian Schwarz.
I wanted so much to meet you and see you and say hello, and also tell you how thrilled I am with the job that you did. I know I was asked yesterday by Desiree, oh, how do you collaborate? And, sort of said, well, we don't.
Like make plans and then go, oh,
Right.
she got the crocodile, and then, was a narrative that doesn't work. They don't want that.
So I thought it was very unlikely we'd be traveling to each other's countries anytime soon in light of what's going on. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to meet you and thank you and tell you how thrilled I am with what you've done. And
thank you for writing a lovely book. It was
fun. Thank you. I have to tell you, usually I can envision a bit about what an illustrator might do, but the octopus pajama thing, I like to think I'm pretty, I don't give an illustrator anything impossible, but this time I was like, oh, we'll see what you can do. So yeah, you did a great job.
I thought, what would octopus pajamas look like? And then I thought, it's all terrible. It's not. They have a hole at the top, then they have a lot of buttons, then they have a lot of sleeves, but you don't quite have to see. Even though I have it planned out, I know exactly how they're cut. I don't think you can ever quite see it because there's so much wiggling.
One of the things I loved when I saw, and I realize I'm very fortunate that I get to, generally speaking, yay or nay the illustrator, was your sense of movement. And that was so important to me, that because he's so active, that I wanted to make sure that the illustrator had a style that was equally active. But could you maybe just talk a little bit about sort of, your initial steps and how you began to kind of create his character?
Well, I mean, the character, it's based on shapes quite a lot. So I'll work out what the main shape is. So, and I try to kind of stick with that. And then it is a lot about what they move like. So I had to work out, one of the first questions was, are they underwater? Yes, they are. But like, do they walk? Or do they swim? And I kind of decided that the parents are kind of walking, they're grounded. I just thought they're serious. They're grounded. But he's not yet. He doesn't know yet.
Right.
So he still swims, he still flies, That thing when you're a child and you're kind of like, maybe I can fly, maybe if I lift one foot and then the other foot, that should work, then I'll fly, right? And then you might spend the whole day doing that. I don't know, maybe that's just me. But I thought he's kind of in that mindset and it works for him, and that would be really nice to just have to have these parents that are like, well, here we go. And then you got this like, beep, 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 beep.
Yeah. Oh, I love how much you totally get him.
This is pretty fantastic. When I was on your website, I saw that you go out and find things to make your own brushes.
One that I really like is this one. And I've always got written on where they're from so that I remember, or what they're for sometimes. And this one's from a dance that I went to, and somebody was wearing a feather boa, and they were dancing a lot, and feathers went everywhere, and I was just picking them up while I was dancing and putting them in my dress.
Is there ever a character that has given you trouble that you just can't quite seem to get them to cooperate when you're trying to create them?
So every time I have to come up with new characters, I do a bit of a casting call, and I just draw them really roughly, and I just fill whole pages of just rough shapes, and I put eyes on them, and I look at them, and they look back at me, and I'm like, you maybe. Then I invite them in, basically, and I let them, I draw them in different situations, and kind of give them props and problems, and sometimes they don't, I mean, generally they have fun with some things and they don't do other things so well, but it's like it's a whole phase. You got to get to know them, and sometimes they just don't wanna. Most of them go through that for a bit, and yeah, and then at some point you get along, and then I can draw them. That's my technique.
What is the best part of illustrating someone else's work versus your own?
It's less than half the work. It's great. Because, you know, everything just becomes more than the sum of its parts, right? So if you do the maths backwards, if you cut it up into several parts, it's less work. You have to do it all. You have to do so much more. So it's really nice. You just get to, you know, that there's already something there, and it's not a blank page, and it's like a gift. It's like somebody gave it to you, and you go, oh, thanks. Oh, you trust me with this thing that you made. Oh, and then you make something nice of it. It's basically, it's just a very nice thing to do, isn't it? It just feels, I don't know, feels good. If you do it all by yourself, you always have to go, you know, when you kind of get stuck, you go, why did I do this in the first place? And then maybe you can't remember because you're having a bad day. But then if somebody else did it, you can go, oh, why did I do this in the first place? Well, I'm sure they know. Oh, and then you just get on with it.
Your artistry obviously speaks for itself. I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and your talent with us, and I look forward to following you. I think that I have withheld the awesome book for long enough. So I was thinking, could you please, pretty please, read How to Put an Octopus to Bed to us?
That's great. Thank you. I'm really excited to read it. I do love reading it. I will tell you, I'm not as smooth as I am with books I've read out loud 200 times, like Goodnight Construction Site, and 200 might be an understatement. I feel like I could read that book out loud in my sleep. But I'm super excited to read to you How to Put an Octopus to Bed. And here's our little character, Floyd. I think he's so adorable. Giggly, squiggly, oh, so wiggly, super silly, can't sit stilly. With Mama O and Octopop, little Floyd just never stop. But now, Ma yawns, it's getting late. Let's get to bed, it's nearly 8. Oh, okay, I'll lead the way. And then he's off in a bubbly spray. Bath time! Floyd has a giant grin. I'll fill the tub. You two get in. You have to get clean every day. That's what you two always say. Bear, here's Bear. You sit there and don't get wet. You can see how clean they get. Ma and Pop stand by, confused. A tad concerned, a bit amused. They think about what Floyd just said. He thinks he's putting them to bed? I'll check the water. It's just fine. Here, have some bubble bath of mine. Ta-da! Floyd gives a little spin. Now it's ready. Jump on in. But all those bubbles touch Floyd's eyes, bouncing, floating, flying high. Floyd tries to grab and pop a few, then piles them up to run right through. Thank you for listening.
I just want to finally say thank you, Sherri, so much for taking time out of your day to answer my really silly questions and to also read your brand new picture book.
I think I'm a huge fan of everything that librarians and libraries and school librarians and school libraries do. So thank you for all that you do. It's really, really important work, and I am always hopeful that the world realizes the job that you do and how it affects communities and children and all of us. So thank you for that.
Well, I think that the love is mutual.
Thank you for your interest in me and my books and your support. And I wish you and everyone at your library and all of the people that you serve all the best. And just thank you so much. I'm really, really grateful and honored.